Comrades, the situation in the Ukraine is getting out of control very quickly. Now, I do apologize for getting to this so late because I was in the middle of Debunk Austrian Economics Week, so it took a while to get through all of that before we could get to here. And then the previous Bitcoin video was already in the works at that time, and I wanted to get it out as soon as possible. So, forgive me for that. We can now move on to the Ukraine and the situations going on there. Right now, the country is almost basically at a civil war point. People who are fed up with what the government has been doing have been getting more and more momentum to where now we almost have a situation where half of the country is under their control. The power of the protesters or rioters or almost revolutionaries, if you will, although I wouldn't call them that, are now at the point where they're now forcing concessions out of the government. And now the government is now willing to share some of the power or appoint positions of power to the leaders of the protest movement. All this pretty much began when the recession finally hit Europe, and Europe started to suffer along with everybody else. Now, Ukraine, just like the rest of Eastern Europe, was really hit hard by a lot of this. A lot of what little they actually had was destroyed as a result of this huge recession. And then, of course, the debt crisis came in, and that made things even worse. It was austerity, 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 and people's lives were getting made worse and worse. Everybody was suffering. Basically, everyone saw everything they have drop: living standards, healthcare, education, everything. So the people who are out in the streets right now protesting, they have a right to be mad, and they should be mad, because genuine wrongs have been done to them, and they are right to be angry, and they are right to rebel, as Mao said. Capitalism is in crisis, and people are rebelling against that. Whether they actively realize that capitalism is the problem or not is another story. But the point is, the people that are out there right now protesting are mad, and they damn well have a right to be. Now, these protests actually began very similar to what happened with Occupy Wall Street. Now, hear me out on this. There was popular anger towards what was going on, and somebody made a general statement of protest that we should protest something. So everybody showed up. There was no particular goal in mind. It was just that this had to happen. So people went out and started protesting. Now, this is where the similarity with Occupy Wall Street actually ends, because the people there in Ukraine were willing to actually fight. They were willing to go out there, get killed, like smash cops, like actually street fight. Because frankly, the people in Ukraine have it a lot worse than the privileged working class in the first world. Well, you can make an argument as to what position the Ukraine actually has, but the working class there is nowhere near, doesn't have anywhere near the privilege that the working class here does have. Thus, we were seeing, as a result of their more desperate material conditions, they were willing to take more and more radical action towards changing what it is that they thought was wrong. Evidence of this can be seen very widely. Just watch the footage of some of the protests, and you can see, like, literally protesters like surrounding a cop and then just beating the hell out of him. Like, just they get one guy out of the crowd and then just wail on him until he submits. I mean, this is really no different than what cops do to protesters all the time. Now, what's going on with this is that there is a big divide in Ukraine society. Given the position that the Ukraine is in, they have a choice to make. They can either be allied with the European Union, which is what the vast majority of these protesters want, or they can be allied to Russia, which is what the more eastern end of the country actually wants. So this is what we're seeing. There's a huge contradiction here. Given the nature of capitalism, the Ukraine has to ally with somebody, and there's a conflict, a contradiction over which country they should actually go with, or pardon me, the European Union. Now, the big problem is the people who are really pushing to go with the EU is the Fascist Party. And now when I say Fascist Party, they really are fascists. Like, it's not a secret. There's swastikas, white power symbols, hatred towards immigrants, hatred towards Jews, everywhere. In fact, when they capture a building, there's quite often swastikas and other white power symbols actually spray painted on them. So this, while it didn't initially start this way, the drive for the move towards the EU is being pushed by the Fascist Party. And that should be pretty obvious. That's the point of a European Union, like a fourth society. What was it? Fourth Reich, that's the word I was looking for. And this is very much a very nationalist sentiment. This is who we are, this is our identity, and a lot of the people see the European Union that way, that it's a European identity, this is who we are, and this is our empire. And yeah, it seems a lot like a Fourth Reich to a lot of people. And that is this really is the mentality that the pro-EU protesters, the fascist party, are pushing for. Essentially, to side with the protesters who are doing all of this is to side with the fascists, and that's not a good thing. Now, as Marxists, this kind of leaves us in a bit of a difficult position because we can't support the cops and we can't support the fascists. So, kind of in a bit of a situation. But thankfully, in the eastern end of the country, there's a lot of socialists, in particular a lot of communists, many of whom have now taken to the streets as well in order to defend their communities and basically behalf of the country that they're on from the fascists. Now, they've had a very strong line of going towards Russia. In this case, given the material conditions on the ground, that the EU is actually a very comparable imperialist power compared to Russia, the fact that it's being driven by fascists means it has to be opposed. The fascists have to be stopped. So we're going, obviously we would side with the Marxist-Leninists anyway, but it's very, very imperative in this case. I don't particularly want, anyone to ally with the imperialist Russia, but given the alternative, we're kind of going to have to go in that direction. Because overall, despite the fact this is essentially choosing between two imperialist powers, we're really, really going to have to go against the fascists. Now, obviously, this situation is far more complicated than everything I've given here. There's timelines of tremendous events that give a little bit more context to what's happening. From the last that I heard, the Prime Minister of Ukraine stepped down, and now there's negotiations going on, and are probably going on right about now if it's not actually been settled by the time this is actually uploaded. What we do have to understand overall, despite everything else that's going on, is that we have to fight the fascists. We have to make sure they don't get into power. Now, that's kind of one of the things that drives me nuts, is that we have fascists taking to the streets in impressive numbers that are really getting a job done. I mean, this is how dangerous fascists can be if they actually really get organized and they get support of the people. I mean, it's terrifying what they can actually come up with. LOL, Nazi Germany. But this is what drives me nuts. The Western media is completely looking the other way on the entire anti-Semitism. All the racism, the swastikas they're putting on things. The media, essentially in the West, is just completely looking the other way. Because they want support to go towards the European Union, not to Russia. Because the US has a fairly decent relationship with the EU, but they don't have a very good one with Russia at all. In fact, they see them as one of the main competitors. So, it's really irritating to watch them do this. And now consider the liberals. Now they're going around supporting the protesters. Go with them. Strong. Get out there, fight the cops, fight the country, stuff like that. Now, I mean, aside from the fact that they're obviously dumb and they don't realize they're actually supporting fascists, just think about that. If people who are being exploited and oppressed in the U.S. do that, liberals are the first one to complain about the use of violence. No, don't do that. Don't go out there and fight. Don't attack the cops. Don't engage in any kind of violent struggle. And they oppose that, and they speak against it whenever it happens, despite even when it's highly justified in doing so. Yet here we see it happening in another country, and they're just jumping all over it, defending it, saying, good for you, get out there and fight. But where are they when it needs to be done here? Nowhere. And in fact, when it does happen here, they start crying about it. Then again, as Marxists, we pretty much hate liberals anyway. And sometimes, because of situations like this, hating them more than conservatives. So just as the main point I wanted to make for the video is have people understand that the protesters who are sweeping across the country in Ukraine right now are fascists. And they need to be opposed. Fascism in all forms must be stamped out. If anybody has any like real good information on the Marxist-Leninists there, because unfortunately I wasn't really able to find anything all that great. If you've got that kind of information, by all means place it in the comment section so that other people can see it. I'm sorry, I just couldn't find anything like really reliable from any kind of Marxist stance from the people that are there right now. So it's important that we do get a good understanding of that. So in the end, you know, keep it strong, fight the fascists, and all the power to the communists and the socialists on the east end of the country that are trying to ally with Russia, and more importantly, trying to stop the fascists from taking over. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.